Hello and welcome to Higher Ed Live. I am your host, Seth Odell, coming to you live as always from the Milliard Southern New Hampshire University here in Manchester, New Hampshire. I hope you guys are ready for a fun and very interesting show. That's my coworker Dave in the background. He's going to be peeking in occasionally. That's what he does. We're still here working. What can we do? He's always here. I hope you enjoy him as much as you enjoyed the show. We're talking all about roommate matching on Facebook today. And it's an interesting subject matter. And if you haven't thought about it before, you need to. And if you have, you're going to be really excited to hear from the folks that are really kind of leading the way in this conversation. What we're talking about doing is actually utilizing Facebook to allow students to sort of self-match roommates, find the best fit for them. And then we're going to talk about what that fit actually means. Can Facebook actually be used to make students happier, more successful, and institutions more successful as well by decreasing conflict and increasing retention and success? Well, this is kind of all the stuff we're going to be talking about. It's something that's going to be a really big issue in years to come, but it's happening right now at just a few key institutions that are the leaders, and we have one of them here tonight to talk all about it. But first, as always, let's thank the sponsors who make Higher Ed Live possible. We are sponsored by Integral, the creators of the Schools app on Facebook, a private Facebook community to boost enrollment and retention. Check out how top schools are using Integral to meet enrollment goals and fight summer melt. Summer melt, guys. It's summer. You don't want to melt. Find out what they're doing. We are also sponsored by Omni Update, the leading web content management system CMS provider for higher education. The company's web CMS OU campus. It's secure, it's scalable with great tools, features, deployment flexibility, and awesome user community. In fact, they're some of the nicest folks in higher education. So check out what CSU Channel Islands has done to utilize OU for a successful CMS replacement. Changing CMS is no joke. Check out what they did. It was a lot of work, but they're sharing the details with you. We're also sponsored by Scavenger, a Google-funded mobile game about going places, doing challenges, and earning points. Check out what Boise State and Oregon State did using Scavenger U to have students explore their libraries. Check it out because, hey, get students in the libraries, get them studying, get them getting the grades up. Scavenger can actually help you do it. Use their mobile phones, make it happen. That link is out in the back channel, as are all the others we're talking about right now. And finally, Converge Consulting is a measurable multi-channel marketing firm. They help their clients strategize, execute, and analyze their marketing efforts. And most recently, they partnered with HubSpot. So check out what they could do with HubSpot in higher education to use data and support your institution's goals. Check out that link if you haven't already done so. So guys, again, we are talking all today about Facebook and the future of roommate matching. And if you haven't thought about roommate matching, it's a surprisingly important issue. It's one of the biggest decisions a student makes after deciding the school they're going to be going to, and it has a huge implication on their first year and years to come. And we're going to be talking about how you can actually utilize social media to assist that and make a difference. So let's go ahead and bring on tonight's guests quickly and get this thing on the road, because I know you guys want to talk about this. So first, allow me to introduce TJ Logan, University of Florida Associate Director of Housing for Administrative Services. TJ, welcome to Higher Ed Live.
Thanks, Seth. Appreciate that.
Hey, I'm really excited to have you here. You know, I've been following what you guys have been doing at UF for a long time. It's really kind of been the leaders of the pack, so I cannot wait to talk with you tonight all about this.
Thank you. Thank you. I definitely appreciate that. We've stepped out there a couple of times and glad that we have.
And we're not alone. They've made partnerships in their housing efforts with Facebook with a company called RoomSync. You guys know I've talked about them before. So I reached out and said, hey, let's get them on the show as well. Let's have this a full conversation. So welcome, Robert. Oh, God, Rob, don't bother me. Castellucci, right?
Yeah, that's it.
I always stumble on it, but it's good. He's the president and CEO of RoomSync, guys. You guys know RoomSync because I've written about it. I know you've read about it. But if you haven't, Rob is the president and CEO, all things RoomSync, kind of owning this sector of the industry right now. So, Rob, welcome, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me on the show, Seth.
Awesome. I'm so excited to have both you guys on the show. It's a big topic, and I think it's a topic people don't really think about a lot. I wrote about it about a year ago, saying this was the first example I could see in social media having a real direct impact in higher ed and seeing where things can change and come. So TJ, let me bring you up real quick. As we get into the conversation, why don't you just start by telling us a little bit about yourself and what you do at UF?
Sure. I'm the Associate Director of Housing for Administrative Services. My basic role at UF Housing is to oversee the business of housing. So anything in terms of contracts, applications, all of our process-based things through our undergraduate and graduate and family housing units. The marketing arm reports to my area. Customer communications and relationships report to my area. Area desk operations, safety and security, anything that you could think of in terms of operations management really falls into my area of the operation. To really sum it up, our job is to fill the beds and make the revenue. That's what it comes down to.
So it sounds like you have a lot of responsibilities on your plate, obviously a lot of things. Where does
Sure.
roommate matching come into that? I mean, where did this conversation come up that this became an issue that you guys have to be, addressing beyond just of putting names in a hat and pulling them out?
Yeah, well, it comes up, and it's important for me for a couple of reasons. One is the fit that it has with our overall philosophy. Unlike most businesses out there, the business of housing is very unique. We're not in the business of selling tires. We're in the business of connecting people and building community. We have to do it in a sustainable way and in a way that is efficient and effective, but we are in the people business, and our students are the most important things to us as we move through our business. So that's why it's so important to me. At UF particularly, we really struggled in that area, as a lot of institutions do. And so it rose to the top as an issue that we needed to pay quite a bit of attention to, and really started to invest some time over the last several years.
Now, as we dive into it, Rob, I want to put you on real quick too. Just give us a brief kind of primer. What is RoomSync? What do you guys do? And then we're going to pull TJ back on and start really diving into what you guys have done together in your partnership.
Sure. So really in one sentence, I'd say RoomSync is about empowering roommate choice. So flipping what is a traditional office-driven process in roommate assignments into student satisfaction-driven process. And we've chosen to do that through social media using Facebook. So that's a real quick sum up of what we do.
Cool. So TJ, let me bring you on again and talk to me real quick.
Sure.
Obviously, you guys have been working with RoomSync for a couple of years. What happened before that? What was going on pre-RoomSync, or before you were using Facebook for roommate matching? What was going on, and what was the kind of the challenges you were facing?
We were like most institutions several years ago, if you were to go back several years, where we utilized a survey, a questionnaire. We would ask students questions like, is it okay if your roommate eats your Pop-Tart, and do you like to sleep in, or those types of things. And we found, as I think most institutions do today, that there were more parents filling out those surveys than students. We got pretty darn good at matching parents, but we were not really great at matching students. And so a few years ago, we actually abandoned that process, and we had done our homework. We had looked at research that said there really wasn't a good way for us to match roommates in at least a statistically significant way. So we said, you know what, we're not going to match roommates. We're going to, and I remember walking in my first year of looking at the assignments process at the University of Florida. I walked into a conference room. There was a big conference table with just huge stacks of index cards on it. And the process was literally, I'm going to grab this card, and you're roommates. Staple them together, and that's how it worked. We looked at age and things like that, but outside of that, it really was as random as it could be. Part of the challenge with that is not that it was any better or worse than what we were doing before. The major challenge was explaining that to our customers. So if a parent called us up and said, I'm not happy with my roommate match, how did you do this? It's really hard to explain to somebody that because to them it felt like we weren't putting a lot of thought into this. Although we were putting as much thought in as the other processes. It was very clear to us that students were on Facebook. They were engaging in the space. We had actually had a conversation about building a Facebook app internally. I don't know if I ever even told Rob that. Building an app internally, and we had written the parameters for that and what we were planning to do. And along came Rob, and the fit was pretty perfect. They'd already invented the wheel. We didn't need to go out and reinvent it, and there was a lot of good fit there. And then the hard work was just convincing the fine people here at the University of Florida that this was a step that made sense for us.
Well, and I think it brings up a couple really good points. I mean, a lot of schools do somewhat of a random selection, so whether it's totally random or somewhat. Sure. But what they do are seeing, I mean, we were talking about this on Twitter earlier today, that folks are saying we're seeing students coming onto our Facebook pages and they're trying to find their own roommates, because a lot of institutions, you get matched with someone, but you can submit a request. Yeah. Usually it's if you already knew someone already, but people are essentially going out and using Facebook already to vet themselves and then go in and make a change. And I have to imagine that poses not only a challenge, but it also poses a huge amount of work. I mean, you're supplying your new student with a huge challenge right off the bat, which is, we're not, in theory, you're putting in a lot of time and effort, but they're feeling like you're not putting in effort into a major decision. And then they feel like they have the burden of going out and finding their own roommate, and they use Facebook. So, I mean, Rob, when you started looking to start this, I mean, were you seeing this? Were you already seeing, before you guys had this product around, like people already using Facebook and essentially trying to, make these matches? Because I keep hearing this from schools, saying that on their pages, people are on there and trying to switch the roommates, on their own, posting on walls, doing whatever they have to do.
Yeah. So absolutely, Seth. I have a background in student housing. So we would do the roommate assignments through the pen and paper questionnaires. All of the residents would fill those out. We give out assignments in the summertime. And then it was like we sent them out and waited, right? So we waited maybe 10, 15 minutes. Then the calls started coming in. And I was the one answering the calls. I probably got 30, 40 calls in a given day, all about Facebook, all from either upset parents or residents. So really at that point, it was the figurative light bulb, right, to see, why can't you build this thing, this new Facebook thing, this was in 2006, into the process rather than it being that knee-jerk reaction to the process.
Yeah. Well, and it's a good point because, I mean, already students are using it, right? So they're already using this platform to try and address something because clearly in their world there's a problem, even if the institutions aren't seeing it. And even if the problem is just like we want students to just be happy, so just students being excited, teachers, so you guys look at this and you say, okay, the students are already using Facebook on their own. They're going out of their way. Instead, let's provide them with a solution, right? And how did that start? I mean, when you're talking with Robbie, said he brings kind of the wheel to you guys.
Sure.
How do you go about even launching something like this? Like, how did it formulate at the beginning?
Well, I'll say Rob made it extremely easy. Let's put it that way. We knew what we wanted to do. We knew what our customer service delivery model was, and Rob represented a product that we laid that out, and he said, yes, I can do that. I can fit that, and our product fits that really well. That's one of the things I really like about what Rob does is, it's not a one size fits all solution. And we could kind of pick and choose the way that we were going to implement it. Our students are unique to us as are at most institutions. So working with Rob was really the easiest part of this. One of the things I know you're probably going to ask is, how do you convince students to use it? Convincing students to use it was the easiest part of this. The hardest part of this was convincing us to use it, convincing ourselves internally that this was a step that didn't just make sense, but that we had to take.
So let me pose a question to both you guys then. I mean, because one of the biggest issues I see, this comes out every fall. We're going to see articles this fall again, that when they cover this issue, they always say, why it's so important that students are matched randomly, that this is important because school is all about diversity and they shouldn't just be matched with people that like the same music or like other things. How did you, I'm sure there was concerns like that internally when you brought this up. What were your thoughts? And I'm going to toss to Rob too after you, just to get his thoughts as well, because I'm sure this is one of the biggest things people think is, well, tough, I mean, you see editorials, well, tough luck for the students. They should be matched randomly. This is about them growing and kind of forcing this growth opportunity. What did you guys think when you thought about that problem?
No, that was a big part of the conversation, and at the time that we've been doing this for 3 years now. At the time that we jumped into the space, we really couldn't find a comparable solution out there, or anybody that was doing anything comparable. So in higher education, in student affairs, we like to benchmark. We like to know what's going to work before we do things, and that was a real struggle for us. And the biggest discussion that happened internally, really even at the vice president level, was, wow, are you going to ruin diversity in your residence halls? I'm very fortunate in that, my associate VP that I report to, Norb Dunkel, and I said it at a Kukuai, I'll say it here again, he trusted what he was hearing in terms of the need to be in the space. If I remember the quote exactly, he said, somebody's got to try it, we'll measure it, and then we'll reassess. And that's exactly what we did. So, as we launched in a very intentional way with an intention to measure as we went, measure the impacts. There's a certain level of trust that has to go here, not just an internal trust with staff or between supervisors and those staff members that are always pushing on these types of initiatives, but also you have to trust your students a little bit in a way that maybe we haven't before. Social media is about giving up control, not taking it, and that was a paradigm shift for us, and that was something that we had to convince ourselves made sense.
Well, and I really love the conversations about data, and I'm really excited to get into those initial numbers you found, because some of them, for you folks watching on the back channel, you're going to be surprised at some of the stuff they found. But first, Rob, tell me what happened. So when this launches, give us a little bit of a quick practical run through on how this works. So that these first cohorts of students that are coming in and using this, how do you guys go about trying to match compatibility? Is it about like we both like the same TV shows? I mean, how detailed of a process is it? How important is it to make the user experience easy? Like, what are you guys looking for, and how do you guys kind of define or try to find the best matches?
Right. It's all about empowerment, right? So it's not like we're trying to be this special algorithm that is going to match people absolutely perfectly. That's really tough to do, and try and be like that eHarmony.com, Match.com for roommate matching. Instead, we decided, let's get some general questions. We've seen some research about bedtime being a strong indicator for compatibility. Let's get that research there, but then also let's really just give them the car, right? Let's give them the empowered control to choose their own roommates. And really, I think, personally, it's about the conversations and about seeing their Facebook profile that already exists. That's another key thing, right? So probably a lot of people listening out there have some kind of a self-selection software that they're using right now for roommate matching. If it doesn't incorporate Facebook, then you're basically asking these students to build a second Facebook profile for just the purposes of matching, which in my opinion is not going to be as accurate as their first Facebook profile. There's a lot of data showing that these are really virtual reflections of themselves, these Facebook profiles. So it's a lot of good information. The conversations on Facebook take them a step further as well, and then they're taking control of that, right? That's how we like to do roommate matching. Is we're not doing the matching, they're doing the matching.
Well, I really do love that concept that you guys aren't telling them who they're matched with. You're just giving them as much information as they want to utilize to decide for themselves who's a match, and that totally makes sense. And first of all, guys, there's so much going on, so please send in your questions. Hashtag HighRedLive. I have a lot of questions. One of them we're going to address later is: should students have a right to pick their own roommate or not, or should we be force feeding them our idea of what they should be learning culturally at our institution? We're going to get to all that, but first I want to throw you back to TJ for one big question, which is, so one of the biggest arguments I'm sure you heard was the second students are allowed to self-select, you're going to see a drop in diversity. You're going to see students that are trying to find cookie-cutter images of themselves to live with. So first question, you guys say, okay, we're going to go ahead and run a pilot. We're just going to put this out there, see if it works. First up, I applaud you guys for taking a risk in an industry that is so risk averse, it's ridiculous. So congratulations on that, honestly. And then, so tell me, what did you see? I mean, did you see that? I mean, again, I would imagine, most people would imagine, you're going to see students matching themselves with their own clones or the closest they can find, and diversity would plummet among roommate matches. Is that what you saw?
Well, I actually pulled out the data because I knew you'd ask that question. And that was something that we looked at all along the way. Whenever I talk about this, whether it be to Kuhuai or other places, the question I'll ask the group that we're talking with is, what do you think happened? Did diversity of roommate matches go up or down? And a lot of people assume that it went down. And we weren't sure. We wanted to trust our students. We went out there and we launched. We followed it all along. I'll tell you that there's two interesting things we found. In the years leading up to our implementation of RoomSync, we found, just using random roommate matching, that there was a spread in terms of the number of what we defined as homogeneous roommate matches. That's matches between two students of the same reported race on their admission file in a double room, incoming students. There was a spread of 7%. So even in a random process, there was this huge sway of about 7%, between from year to year to year. What we were happy to find was that in the year that we launched, the number of students in homogeneous roommate matches actually dropped by 2% from the year prior when we were doing random. We also found that the key group that dropped, and it makes up a large percentage of our students. I mean, 66% of our students are Caucasian students. That group saw the most noticeable drop in terms of homogeneous roommate matching, and they dropped by a few percentage points, 6 percentage points, just in that first year. And we've continued to see that trend stay pretty true over the past couple of years now. So we were not surprised. We were happy. We were pleasantly surprised that we definitely didn't do any damage to the diversity in our buildings and in our communities. But above and beyond that, I think we actually saw some really engaging things with other students. So.
Well, first of all, I gotta say that's awesome, and I love the fact that you guys are utilizing data to see this. So it's not an arbitrary thought; it's literally you're measuring, and the fact that you're giving students. Yeah. I think it's important to say you gave students a chance to self-select, and diversity did not go down. If anything, it went up. Right. How much it could be. Like I said, there's always a margin, but it did not go down. So give students maybe a little bit more credit that they aren't necessarily as shallow as we sometimes think they are. Or some people might think, give them credit that they will self-select based on other terms. And this is great. I just love the fact that the data is in. Diversity might not be an issue. So Rob, tell me then, is there any trend that you're seeing them select based upon? I mean, are people selecting based upon, like music, based upon lifestyle, like someone that's like stays up late? Like, what is there any kind of trends that you're seeing? Like, if it's not obviously a diversity issue, which is great that students are open to diversity and want to be a part of this, what are the kind of things that potentially you think might be swaying some of these decisions?
Yeah, so definitely in our first year of implementation with the University of Florida, we learned a lot of different things, a lot of things about features that users wanted, that our clients wanted, that were not there. And the number one request that we received after that first year implementation was majors. So everyone wanted to search by majors. They wanted to either connect with people of their same major or sometimes of different major, but certainly that was the number one most salient point that came through to us through our user feedback, was they wanted to connect with people of the same major or of different majors. nature.
Yeah. And I think that makes a ton of sense. I think it definitely does, that a student would want to be part of someone who's in the same program, has the same general interests, going through the same struggles, studying at the same times, might want to be in the same clubs. That makes a ton of sense. So TJ, let me ask you this. So you guys do this pilot, and it's going, and
Yep.
students, you first find out that diversity is not impacted. If anything, it's assisted, which is great. What else are you seeing? I mean, are students happier? I mean, is it the same? Like,
Sure.
what are they seeing? And then also, I mean, I have to imagine, like, what are your RAs, your residence hall folks saying?
Yeah.
Did they see any kind of a difference? They're on the ground. Was there anything
Sure.
from them that was kind of good feedback for you?
Yeah, there was a couple things that we had to figure out. One of the major things was, how do you define a good roommate match? I asked that question on Twitter of a number of my housing colleagues with the Hawaii, and the responses were sort of all over the board, but a popular response was that there was a reduce in roommate conflict. And so that was something that we wanted to look at, something we wanted to measure. And we started by looking at room changes. And so we thought, well, we've done this big initiative. The number of room changes will most certainly go down. And they didn't. They stayed exactly the same. And we thought, oh, well, okay, room changes didn't go down. Let's ask our staff what might be going on there. And so we asked staff about roommate conflicts that first year, and we've asked in subsequent years as well. We asked, do you think roommate conflicts have increased, decreased, or stayed the same? 65% said they decreased. So even though we were still doing these number of room changes, the actual number of roommate conflicts decreased, and then another 50% said they were also less severe. So we had less roommate conflicts according to our staff. The roommate conflicts were less severe. And as we dove into conversations with our staff, what we sort of could summarize that as was, are students still going to change their rooms? Yes. Is it always going to be because of a roommate conflict? No. And the most overwhelming piece for us was that our staff was telling us that they can start the conversation in a different place now. In the past, a roommate would walk up to them, or a roommate conflict, and say, you put me in this situation, and how are you going to fix it? And now they would walk up to that staff member and say, hey, I'm in this bad situation. Can you help me? And we position ourselves to help students rather than be adversaries to students who have put them in a bad situation. And that was an amazing thing. That was a great place to be with our students. And I always sort of like to use the quotable quote that this doesn't change our work. It just allows us to start our work in a different place. And it's a good place.
Oh, that I got to say is a really, really great point. It's a point I think people need to take away from the conversation, is that I totally get it. Allowing a student to select their own roommate means you're putting them in the driver's seat, and they have to take ownership of that decision. So 2 months in, if there's a conflict, you're right, they can't go knock on the RA's door and go, you guys put me with this terrible person, you need to pull me out right now. Yeah. Instead, they're knocking on the door saying, I need help. I'm having a problem with my roommate. Yeah. But that's not a small change. That's a huge change in the conversation, and it means that, yes. If anything, we talk about people that talked about the diversity issue, which we've addressed, and I think has been a really nice thing. Is their argument is we do want to teach students things like college about learning experiences. Well, making them make a major life decision like picking their roommate, or allowing them to if they want to, and then saying, okay, but you're responsible for working with us if there's a conflict. That's a huge change from allowing a student that's placed with someone to push the blame on the institution. And I have to think, that's a pretty major change in the way those situations are addressed. I'm sure the way the student kind of goes through the process.
Well, yeah, and to be honest with you, it's really a pretty big paradigm shift and philosophy shift for us. I think, by and large, in our field, there's always been this undertone that learning has to be hard. Challenging a student has to be hard. And we're sort of reframing that a little bit, that learning doesn't have to always be hard. It can be something that you partner with students on, not something that you're always sitting on the other side of the table with them and dealing with. And so, that's exciting for us because it empowers us to do our work in a whole different way. Yeah. And be seen by students in a whole different way. That's a great thing.
So let me bring up the next point, because this is where the connection gets really exciting. And you guys, again, folks, I've been following what you guys have been doing for a while now. So you do this pilot, you run it. First up, you see there's no issue on diversity. You see that there's reports of decreased amounts of conflict, and the conflicts that are occurring are less severe. Let's extend that further. What does that mean when there's less conflicts? Because here's where the conversation gets interesting, because what not everyone realizes is one of the top 5 reasons students drop out of school is due to their current housing situation. So I know we're early with the data and everything, but where do you see this kind of going? If you're able to tell your institution, we've tried this pilot and now we're seeing a decrease in conflict, what are the potential ripples of that impact?
I want to let Rob answer, because he's really living this stuff in terms of the research on roommate matching, and And I think he has a really good perspective on
And
it.
that's a great, Rob, I'm pulling up right now, man. Walk me through this, because I have to imagine that as you started to see this, I mean, I don't want to say that what you guys started off with was a simple process or tool at all, because it wasn't, but you were looking to make students happy. And what happened when you guys started realizing that students are happier and that impact goes beyond just their living situation? Walk us through what that process has been like and what you're kind of seeing as a trend.
So yeah, actually, you really opened our eyes to that, Seth. So when you covered that Michigan State study about that link, it was always kind of right there in front of us, but you pointed out to us. So I want to thank you for doing that. It's a major issue right now. The Lumina Foundation has a major focus on increasing the number of graduates here coming out of the United States in the next couple of years. So it's something that we think is really important, and we're just trying to do our small part in that. There are a lot of different factors here that come into play, but roommate conflicts, I certainly can empathize with. If you don't get along with your roommate, that has a lot of different ripples. And we've done a lot of other research about kind of trying to connect the dots, you could say. So it's not just about roommate conflict all of a sudden leads to these college dropouts, but it's a lot of things like stress, depression, a lot of these things, the waves, the ripples, right, that we're talking about. It's not just roommate conflict automatically drop out, but a lot of things that happen in these students' lives that are many times triggered by roommate conflicts leads to additional stress, leads to depression and anxiety, and then eventually will lead to a higher likelihood of those college dropouts. So
yeah. It's just an interesting thing that, I mean, like I said, it's not always a direct correlation, but a lot of folks do know people that have had tough living situations and the impact that has, whether or not they drop out too. I mean, the effect is like, yes, there are one of the top 5 reasons students drop out, they claim, is stress in their living situation. But for those students that don't drop out, how many of them are in a living situation that's stressful and it's impacting their grades and their overall fit with the institution? And how does that ripple through? And this is kind of where, again, we talked about the light bulb. This was last year where I saw a talk that TJ did, and it was put up on Ustream first up, which was awesome. And he was talking about these numbers coming in, and I kind of sat back and I'm like, hold on a second. Like, we're talking about utilizing Facebook to let students self-select a roommate. One, because they want to, and I think you could argue that they should have a right to do that. If they're coming to an institution, they should be able to be in the driver's seat. You're seeing a potential increase in diversity in doing so, and then you're seeing a decrease in conflicts. And that means, again, can you directly correlate? In some situations, maybe not. We're going to see the data is so young, we're going to be seeing this grow. But the thing I said last year, I still believe that this is a place, that this is where you're going to see one of the first impacts, the true impacts of social media ROI in higher ed. You're going to see that if you let students self-select and they do have a decrease in conflict, that's going to lead then to other positive outcomes. They're going to be happier in their living situation. They're going to be potentially doing better in school. Potentially you could see lower dropout rates. It's just a huge ramifications for something off of Facebook. So for TJ, let me ask you this. When you started seeing these kind of things come back, I mean, how big of a deal was that? Now, you said that you guys are just going as a pilot. Like, let's just try this and see what happens. Were you expecting to see this kind of potential from the results?
Well, we were crossing our fingers and hoping that, the numbers that came back would match what we were hearing from students, what we hoped to experience. And they really did. And it's been a wonderful thing. You kind of hit on this, Seth, that roommate matching and those types of things in university housing are one of those few things that garner attention at all levels of the institution. They garner, who amongst us hasn't gotten that phone call from the vice president's office or the president's office saying, hey, we need to deal with this situation right now. And it's because it's got that link to success. It's got that link to persistence and retention. And, the data's out there, the research is out there, and it was exciting that we did something that people had a hard time with, but later on went, wow, this was good. And we're glad you did that, and we're glad we've taken that step and we're leading the way.
So let me toss this back to Rob then in a second, because so here we go. You guys, first off, again, out there in the front of the pack, taking risks and utilizing this. The numbers come in, and not only do you see that it's not a negative impact, but it has a potential huge positive impact. And there's this light bulb moment sort of for the industry, for those of us that have been following this. I have to say, a year ago, definitely past that, all you ever saw was articles from people that weren't traditionally in higher ed, even things in like the New York Times, and people saying it's so important to force students to match to be matched randomly because we have to force this kind of cultural experience that somehow they wouldn't discover on their own because we for some reason don't give students enough credit that they want to have a diverse experience in school. That conversation does seem to be changing as data comes in, because again, data doesn't lie, and I love that. These are conversations we have to have. So if someone at your institution is saying we shouldn't be doing this, you need to say, do you understand that we could potentially, be impacting and decreasing student conflict? We could potentially be having these things. we have to have that kind of a conversation. Not should we use Facebook or not, but should we utilize this tool to address a problem? So Rob, how has this changed? I mean, how has the conversation just in the past 2 or 3 years changed from being, oh, we don't want to use Facebook or students have to do that, to now people getting sort of this is being validated as a potential avenue to actually addressing a core issue that all of our institutions face?
A lot has changed in the past 3 years. So let me put it in one way. I remember a big Talking Stick magazine article. The headline in 2009 was "Facebook Good or Evil." So that at that point in 2009, it was, well, what is this thing? How is it going to impact our jobs? Now I think it's very much more where, this is a tool that we need to be using, right? Actually, one of TJ's colleagues over there at the University of Florida, Amy Jorgensen, collected some great research about showing how many of these housing offices and departments across the country are setting up fan pages and using those to communicate with students. And it's absolutely incredible, especially, I mean, TJ, I'm sure you can share some of the data at the University of Florida, how much engagement you have through Facebook. I think that that's starting to diffuse across the population, and everyone is beginning to understand that this whole thing that Zuckerberg started in his dorm room in 2004 is not going away anytime soon.
Yeah, you kind of hinted at engagement, Rob, and that's something, we're not just on RoomSync. We've engaged in the social space in a number of different ways. Our fan page gets 400,000 page views a month. That's monster. That's a lot of page views. That's more than our website ever got, and it's because that's the space where we engage with our customer. Each year I write an open letter to Facebook fans on our fan page, and it gets a lot of comments. It gets a lot of feedback. It's something that I do because that's the space that they're at, and that's the space that we're engaging in open public discourse about our process. So it goes beyond RoomSync. We certainly do have some more engaging RoomSync numbers now than what we had 3 years ago, but it's even beyond that.
So let's talk about some of those new numbers now. Obviously, so you did this kind of pilot. It came back, I mean, in my opinion, as someone who's watching from the outside, way even better than I would have expected. Really exciting.
Yeah.
What happened next? Where did you guys go from that initial kind of cohort, and where are you now, and what kind of numbers are you seeing?
Yeah. Well, our initial focus was, let's make sure we didn't break anything. Let's make sure we didn't go backwards on anything that we didn't want to go backwards on. And our focus over the last year and a half, 2 years, has really shifted to this idea of, let's really start to measure the impact of this thing and the positive impacts of this thing. So, we pulled the numbers. Actually, Rob pulled them for me earlier this month. Visits to our RoomSync app alone this time around that we've used the network, we've had 89,000 visits to the app. 65% of our incoming population is using the app. We've had 8,000 Facebook messages sent through the app. This is stifling to me, and I love it. 3,520 add as a friend clicks. So there's another byproduct to this whole thing that we're realizing. Students are using it to find roommates, but they're using it for something else as well. They're using it to build their network and build their connections. And so that 3,520 add as a friend clicks, that's straight out of the network. That's right out of the RoomSync app. And then in addition to that, the net increase in Facebook friends for our network, for the group that participated, was 14,000 people over the course of the time that our network's been open. And we still had 3 weeks of data to pour on top of that.
That's so amazing. It really, I mean, some of those numbers again, the fact that you had add as a friend 3,500 is so huge. And I want to ask Rob this then, because Rob, so it sounds to me then like, I mean, you guys clearly, you're providing a service of matching roommates, but as we're seeing from TJ's talking about this, I mean, again, 90,000 visits to the app practically, 3,500 people adding each other as friends. Why did you guys build in those features? Why was it important? I mean, it's obviously you're utilizing this opportunity when students have a real investment in roommates, but it seems like you guys are looking beyond that as well, that it's the social experience around the roommate matching process that you seem to be addressing.
Yeah, well, we tell people that we build the app to look a lot like Facebook, right? And that's on purpose to make the learning curve very low. But we also do that so that we can track the real activity that's happening in here, because we were interested in that. We would have pulled this data for TJ last year, but it didn't exist. So we started tracking it this year, and when we saw, I'm so excited about this, right? Where our core focus will always be roommate matching, right? But this is a very interesting byproduct, like TJ said, and it's going to be really interesting when we get all of our 37 university clients and college clients and pull the data for them and really start to see some aggregate data. I mean, right now we're seeing among a few handful that we pulled, gosh, about 35 visits per user, 1.5 to 2 friend requests per user, and that's just from what we can track, right? We can't track the messages that they send to that person directly through their Facebook profile. We can't track the adds of friends directly through the Facebook profile. So we know that that's the minimum, that's the bottom of the bar, and so it's interesting to see that, and you know, it makes us feel really good about what we're doing as well.
Yeah, that's so awesome, because I do think that's such an interesting point too, that it's going so far beyond that, the roommate selection, because again, students that are coming into an institution with a social network do statistically tend to persist longer and through more hardships because they have a network to support them. Again, one of the biggest reasons students drop out as well is a lack of a support network, whether it's a personal support network at home or a network at school. And I mean, again, you know, our sponsors, Integral, see the same thing. Students that come in with more friends are more likely to succeed. They're also less likely to melt because they feel a stronger connection to the institution. So the fact that you guys have wrapped this up into a whole package is a really, really interesting one. So before I toss into some big open questions that I want to do, I want to throw it back to TJ for a second and say, I mean, TJ, what's next for you guys? I mean, right now, where are you right now this time of year? I mean, are students making the roommate selection changes now? Has that already happened? Where is it right now? When do the next, you know, what do you think comes next for you guys with this?
Yeah, at the University of Florida, we have a very high-paced, fast process here. We're at a point now where a majority of that is really done, and we're sort of cleaning up the assignments process. You know, we are one of the few institutions that allow everyone to self-select their space, including incoming freshmen, and that's something that had to be part of our process as we implemented the room sync network. It was about giving them choice over their space and giving them the freedom to do room changes. Our students do about 1,000 room changes before we ever open the doors. That's something we couldn't have accommodated with our staff, and so by empowering students to do it, we're serving a need there as well. You know, in terms of the future, I think it's really what you just sort of hinted on. You know, there was this aha moment for us with room sync particularly, and with some of these self-selection processes, and it came, you know, each year we do a focus group after we open, and we do it with incoming students, and we talk about how was the process, what could we have done better, how did you like this, that, and the other thing. And in the first year, I remember I was sitting in and I asked the focus group, I said, so how many of you used room sync? And about 40% of the room raised their hand. And I said, well, did it work? And this girl was adamant. You know, she said, no, it didn't work. And I said, okay, talk to me about that. You used it. What didn't work about it? Was it not easy? She goes, no, it was easy to use and everything. She said, I did not find a roommate on there. And I said, okay. I said, well, I'm sorry about that. She goes, you know, I found a lot of other people that I'm still friends with, but I didn't find a roommate on there. And I said, then it worked. That's it. That is really the byproduct, and the aha moment for us was that this is much larger than just roommates. And so, you know, part of the discussions we're having with Rob and with some other institutions that are clients of Rob, whether he knows this or not, are sort of how can we expand on this idea of building community through the app, not just a roommate match. How do we take that beyond the room? How do we take that and look at room transferring and finding roommates in different ways? And I think there's not just a market here. He and I have had a lot of discussion about the UK market as well. You know, in the UK, 95% of the bed space is single rooms. I still think an app like this is important in the UK, and it's because it's more than just about roommates. It's about building community before you arrive. We don't have the freshman camping trip anymore. We need to have these types of opportunities for people to engage in community before they get here.
I totally agree. Could not agree more. And I want to throw it to a question coming in online from Mayon, who's saying, you know, how does the roommate swap placement actually work? Like on a technical level, is it first come, first serve? Like, how does the process work from the time you send the message out? Do students start with a match and then swap? Do they start without anything? Like, how does it technically work? And this is a question to you, TJ, for UF, and then Rob, if you want to join in, just say how, if it works differently, maybe with some of your other clients, or if it's the same across the board.
Yeah, I'll give you the UF side, and there are some different ways to do things. From the UF side, we wanted the platform to be a place where students had an outlet to go out and find people. And so we open the network long before we actually open our room selection process. We give students a good couple months of head start in building community and finding roommates first. And that is a direct response to what we were hearing from students about what was important. In those focus groups, one of the things we ask is, you know, what's more important to you, the room you live in or the person you live with? And overwhelmingly, it's the person and people I live with. And so we wanted to give them the head start on the people part. and then we jump into room selection later. Right now in our process, the way it works is if they make that connection on RoomSync, whether they make it there or elsewhere, when they're selecting a room with us, they can drag that person into the space. We're also unique in that we do not, we changed our philosophy on roommate matching with room selection. I can select a room and bring anybody into that space regardless of their application date. We made the roommate piece a higher priority than your application date in essence, and that was a result of asking students what was more important. And we even asked some tough questions. You know, if there's somebody that has a later application date than you and gets a room before you, is that okay? And students said yes, that's okay, because roommate matches are important to us. And so that's how it works at the University of Florida. We've increased the number of mutual roommate requests significantly here. That was a goal of ours, was to see those get pushed up. Just by adding the platform, we did that, but by marketing it and pushing it and massaging it a little bit, it's really pushed those numbers significantly as well. And it's decreased our phone traffic at the same time. So we're winning on all fronts in terms of the roommate matching piece.
Hey, Ron, let me throw it to you too and just see, is it any different than your other clients? I mean, do the same thing where they open it up early, let the students get in generally before the process starts, or is it kind of different based upon your clients?
Sure. No, that piece is pretty accurate. On the tail end, when mutual matches are made, right now with TJ at UF, what we'll do is we'll send out an automated email, and in that email it will say go to our housing portal to put in the name of your roommate. It's a little bit different at some of our clients. Some have it feed right back into their housing software. Some will decide instead to download an actual CSV file spreadsheet with all the list of everyone who's self-selected. So those are the three ways that different clients, depending on their institution, depending on what really works best for them, they'll set it up a little bit differently depending on them.
Cool. And then, TJ, just one quick question before I open up to a different part of the conversation. Yeah. Just to clarify, because I think it's important to note, I mean, this is not something where students feel they're forced to do this at all, right? I mean, it's
no.
How do you promote them? You essentially tell them this is an opt-in thing. If you want to go find a roommate, feel free, but there's no pressure that if you don't, you're not going to have a roommate or you're going to get stuck with some, some terrible person or something. I mean, do you guys have an idea of like what percentage of your students are using it?
65% of our incoming students are using it this year, and I think there's a few things you have to consider in there. One is there's a certain fixed population that already knows who they want to live with before they ever come here, and so the RoomSync network is an important part of the equation for them necessarily, although as we build on the community aspects, I think it will be. We always get the question, what if somebody says they don't have Facebook? Inevitably, every year we will get somebody that says, hey, I don't have Facebook, what can I do? And there are other ways for people to connect. I mean, you know, whether it's through their college or through their program or through a living learning community, or the old-fashioned way. If you want a random roommate, we'll do it. There are ways to do that, but by and large, it's all about self-selection and empowerment, and that's really where a majority of our process lies.
So I want to bring up to another part of the conversation, which is kind of at the tail end of our conversation, which is a really interesting one. So we've been sitting here for the past 40 minutes talking about what you guys have been how you've utilized Facebook to address roommate matching and sort of the ripple effects that can have on student success, their experience overall. And now I want to talk about whether or not you folks watching, your institutions, have the option to sit back and not do this. And here's why. We hear more and more about institutions already going out and doing this, and folks already trying to find changes. I mean, do you guys think right now, do schools need to get involved in this space? Because to be fair, you're saying it's saving you guys a lot of work as well. It does seem that, sitting back and not trying this, to me, is opening yourself up to, students going out on their own, giving your students a negative experience, them going out trying to find roommates, them going out maybe getting addressed by other third-party sites that you're not working with that are trying to pull them in, get their emails, sign them up for things. There's this whole kind of murky water area, and I just see more and more that like not offering this is just putting your students on the wrong path. What have you seen? I mean, is this a thing where institutions can sit back and say, I'm just not going to do that? I mean, or is this turning more and more into like I don't know if it's the Wild West or what you want to describe it as, but it's becoming an issue that whether or not you address it, the issue still exists.
Yeah, I think it depends on why they're saying they don't have to do that. And there are certainly schools out there. I think Stanford is the big model that they still have the big mysterious roommate matching process that it's part of their culture, it's part of their history, and it may very well be part of what is alluring to their students about living there. But it has to be about the why. So you can't say I'm not going to engage in the space because I don't get it. That's not an option anymore. And I think that's where people fall short, is they go, well, I don't get it or I don't value it. And I think we have to get over that. And I think we have to understand it, value it, and get it, and then decide, can I not be in the space? I think most people will have to answer the question, no, I cannot not be in the space. I have to be in the space some way, shape, or form, and this is probably the answer for a lot of people. But for others, that may not be the case. It's just, but I think you have to focus on the why.
And Rob, what are your thoughts too? I mean, it seems that, clearly you guys want people involved in this space, but I will say you guys are kind of providing a service that, it's not like students weren't trying to do this without you guys before. What you've done is allowed them to do it in kind of a controlled way that just makes a lot more sense for the institution.
Right. Well, there are levels to it, right? So there was that tweet today about, I think it was Boston, right? BU. They have a Facebook group. I see a lot of those Facebook groups that are facilitating matching through there, and it's great, right? Because it's this environment where conversations are happening. I would say that it's not necessarily as operationally organized as what an app can do, but it's still a start. So it's not like it has to be offer on. You don't have to go with something that's paid. I think the important thing is to try something, and like TJ did, right? Try something, measure it, see how it works, get feedback from your students, from a student satisfaction point of view. I think that's really important. And the last thing I'll say is that it's a vacuum, right? If you offer nothing, someone is going to offer something, and the students will probably find that something and use it. So if you're not comfortable with what that something is, you may have a big problem.
Yeah, it's a fair thing. I think you can say either you're going to assist your students in helping them select a roommate and potentially improve your goals, or they're going to go out and try and figure it out on their own. And who knows what's going to happen then? So either do you want to be at the party, or do you want to be sitting outside guessing what's happening?
And that's really it. And that's really the discussion we had here was just because you're not part of the conversation doesn't mean it's not going on. And we just couldn't pretend like the conversation wasn't going on anymore. Yeah. And if it's going to go on, be part of it.
Yeah. So listen, guys, we've been talking for the past 45 minutes now all about what you guys have been doing. Again, TJ, I can't stress enough how exciting it's been to watch you guys kind of taking a lead in this space and really pushing the boundaries and finding this. Because really, you guys are the first folks that are discovering the impacts of utilizing social media to address this problem that I think a lot of folks in your shoes a couple years ago would have said that I'm just not going to deal with that. Let's just give the students and what we're going to give them and tell them kind of tough luck and deal with it. And instead you guys said, let's give the students what we think they deserve, what they should have, and it's actually been a huge impact. And you took a risk, and I love that. So with that said, since all these numbers have started coming in, a lot has changed. This conversation has changed. As we said, here we are talking 45 minutes about the impact and potential impact of Facebook for roommate matching in higher ed and student success, persistence, retention. This is a conversation I think 2 years ago would be highly doubtful any of us thought would be happening. Where do you see it going from here? What are your final thoughts and takeaways you want to leave us with? Because, I can't imagine we're remotely done with this conversation. This seems like it is only the very first chapter of what's going to be a really long story for utilizing social media to address these kinds of educational issues.
Yeah, I do think that things are going to continue to evolve. The keynote speaker this year to Kuhuai was Mark Milleron, and he talked a lot about sort of this generation and where things are going. I actually did a talk at a Kuhuai about 3 big ideas that changed our business forever, and it really focused on these types of technologies and where we need to go with things. I think increasingly we need to understand we are not the sole source provider of community anymore, and we need to engage in those other providers of community and not try to compete with those other providers of community. Rebecca Nathan wrote about this in the early 2000s, that students come with community now. It's different than when I went to college. It's different than when you went to college. They come with community now, and we need to find ways to overlap with that and to complement that and to work with that. And so, one of the things that Mark had suggested in his keynote was that, using student data, using the power of these connections will become the important future. Not just making it a platform, but actually using the data in one way, shape, or form. So, actually, Catherine McGarrah from Oregon State, right before we went live, had tweeted a question about, using a web service to find a community that fits people. And I would challenge us to think even beyond that, to where, when a student logs in and says that we really know them, and it says, hey, students like you thought a community like this was a good fit for them, or students like you succeeded by doing this, or students who exhibited the behaviors you exhibited did not persist to graduation. We need to start leveraging that data. It's easy to get, it's easy to use now, and we need to kind of catch up with this idea that we need to start engaging it quickly. So I think that's the future.
I could not agree more. I am so excited to be able to have the conversations like that around that exact issue and watch it change and evolve. I said it's a growing issue and it's an exciting one to follow. So with that, Rob, what are your final thoughts? I mean, here you guys are. Obviously, you're running a company that's addressing this issue in a really fun space. Again, anyone that's in the educational technology space right now, I'm sure, is really having a fun time. It's a really exciting era. But where do you guys see this going? It really seems to me that, I mean, again, I don't want to speak for you, but someone on the outside are looking at you guys. You were addressing what could have been viewed as sort of a simple problem for schools, and you opened up, I mean, in a way, a really humongous opportunity that went far beyond something that like myself would have seen.
Yeah, so the community building is, like I said, I'm really excited about that for the future, seeing how that works out and what we can do to facilitate that. But going back to what our core is, right, and what we want to do is we want to empower students, right, empower choice, and we do that through roommate selection. But gosh, every night I go to sleep and think there's a lot of work left to be done on just that front, right? So I'm pretty focused on, and we're pretty focused as a company on saying, okay, of the landscape of every college and university in the country that has on-campus housing, what's the breakdown? How many of them are empowering students to choose roommates through one way, shape, or form, whether it's our application or something else? How much empowerment is going on versus having just a paper questionnaire or something to that effect? So that's really what we're focused on as a company over this next 1, 2, 3 years is seeing that shift happen, and I'm helping facilitate that shift, whether it's through our application or something else that works better for an institution.
Hey, well, listen, to both of you guys, thank you guys so much for coming on the show. Teacher, it's been such an awesome conversation. As you guys know, this has been an issue that I've followed for a long time. I have long believed and still do that if you want to see the true impact of social media in education, it's not likes and just engagement and just seeing, nice little comments on your Facebook wall. If you want to impact lives, you have to look at the core issues that we face today. One of the biggest ones is obviously having students be successful. It's persistence, it's retention, it's getting students to finish, go out in the world with the knowledge they wanted to obtain and go out and do the things they wanted to do and to be empowered by your institution to do that. And the reality is, here we are in 2012, we are just finally seeing social media's true role in education. Again, it is not just about getting retweets and likes. It is a lot more than that. And I just can't thank you both enough, because I think it's, if you want to see what social media is all about in education, you want to be on the forefront of it, this is one of the core topics. I would say, for me, it's a top 3 issue right now, simply because it's one of the first ones that have the numbers in, and it's one of the first ones that we are seeing an impact. So both Rob and TJ, thank you guys so much for coming on the show tonight to share your thoughts and talk about this.
Thank you.
Yeah. So.
Yep. Thanks for having us, Seth.
Yeah. So it's been a lot of fun. Let's keep it going.
Yeah, absolutely, exactly. Because we're going to continue this conversation, because again, the numbers are just starting to come in. And thank you guys for watching so much. Because again, if you're interested in this kind of stuff, this is stuff we want to talk about. Because at the end of the day, this is the issues that we want to cover. Because I just don't see them being covered anywhere else. Why are there not more articles about this? Why are there not more conversations about this? Why are there not more conference presentations outside of our guests here bringing this in? We need to stop just talking about the simplistic, single-dimensional view of social media and start looking more importantly at how it's addressing these core issues. Tonight's conversation has been doing exactly that. So I thank you so much for being a part of this conversation. I hope you guys take this back to your own institutions, because I'll say it right here on the show right now. If your institution is not looking at how to utilize Facebook to support roommate matching, to support student success, you're missing the boat, because the data is in, and you have to at the very least, be having a very serious conversation about that at your institution. So until next time, I am Seth Odell, the host of Higher Ed Live, and I hope you guys can come back next week. We'll be back with another show. Got 2 topics in the queue right now. We're going to pull the trigger on one of them tomorrow, and then we'll be going through all of August as well with a little bit of a diverse schedule. I appreciate you guys joining us on Wednesday. I'm traveling most of August, so we're going to get the shows to you whenever we can. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and as always, every episode is archived over at higheredlive.com. I will see you guys next week.